Good afternoon. My name is Philip Yang. I'm one of the co-artistic directors, along with my brother David. Very, very happy to welcome any guests, members of the community who are here to take advantage of our first guest masterclass of the summer. We love our guest artists. Today is really special. We welcome Christopher Taylor, who's a pianist. He started off his career on a very high note with wins in the Clyburn and the Capel and the Gilmore. He's extensively concertized and now makes his home at the University of Wisconsin, where he's a professor of piano. I also admire people who are not only extraordinary musicians, but who cultivate continued passions in other fields. I know he's got degrees in mathematics and computers and engineering. I know he's trying to build a piano right now. If any of you know what a double manual Steinway is, there's only one in the world, right, that was built. And Kit is making a special project of re-engineering that beast, which is awesome, and it involves 3D modeling and all kinds of things. But he's that kind of intellect and a wonderful musician. We look forward to the four students that we have here this summer who will play for him. So let's welcome Kit Taylor. And our first performer, each one will get about a half hour. Thank you.
All right, bravo, bravo, beautiful. So am I live? Is the mic working? I'll take that as a yes. All right, suddenly we're in the Harmon Club here. Let's see, I obviously hit something wrong. Good, okay. Good, yeah, your control is excellent. For instance, in the first movement, your use of articulation, your leggiamente, 16th notes were spot on. I thought really excellent, and it's such a engaging and friendly sort of work. It's so interesting in Beethoven's middle period how he sort of alternated between, these titanic works, the Waldsteins, the Appassionatas, Les Adieux, and then in between he inserts these little guys, Opus 54, Opus 78, and of course these ones, the little sonatas, don't get as much attention from piano students, but they show the other side of Beethoven. The almost a miniaturist. These are sort of character pieces almost. So a couple things I wanted to talk about. One of them, of course, it's a huge topic, is pedaling, and I think in general, your pedal, you might be able to have it play a sort of a more active role in your interpretation. And at the moment, it almost sort of seems like a supporting member of the cast. But I think it can really be a central character, and it can really help make more vivid and more palpable certain, contrasts and bring out certain features. I mean, for instance, accents. One of the things that's difficult in Beethoven is just there's so many different accents, and there are regular old accents like these, and then of course there are tons of sforzandos, and when we're young, our teachers tell us that a sforzando or an accent is just a matter of playing louder. But of course, there's a lot more to it than that. And I always tell my students that, in addition to the loudness ingredient of accents, there's the time ingredient, which is just as important, and then also the pedaling ingredient. And, very often you can make a sforzando more vivid and yet ensure that it doesn't become obnoxious by using your foot as a way to sort of enhance the sforzando and to make it stand out in a way that's clear and yet at the same time is subtler than just play it loud. And very often crescendos and decrescendos, you can enhance those with your foot very often, and when there's an interesting harmony or when he switches to the minor, that's another place where your foot can sort of help to make it more vivid. And I mean, there's a danger in this piece, I mean, particularly the second movement, that it'll just sound sort of like a stream of 16th notes. I mean, of course, punctuated every now and then in the second movement with a bum, bum, bum. But there are long stretches with a lot of 16ths, as you know, and it's very easy to get lost in them. So, you know, part of this part of this crescendo here, maybe it can be increase the use of your foot. And when, you know, in here, in this bar, in this, you know, when you have stuff like that, you know, you get to here. You can get away with a little more pedal because the harmony isn't changing. And I think, you know, and that enhances the forte, and it just as I said, ensures that the stream of 16th notes never becomes sort of monochromatic and monotonous in any way. Now, when you get here, I mean, that sort of stuff, obviously the pedaling is going to be a little different there, and because you've got all these minor seconds, you can't obviously just put your foot down. I don't think is a very good idea. But in fact, you know, having a different sort of pedaling can help bring out the fact that there's not this, you know, that's one texture here with the smooth eighth notes in the left hand. When you get here, those disappear, and you know, and so the articulation is different and the pedaling is different. It becomes more a kind of rhythmic pedaling where you just do a little bit on the beats and help to, you know, and bring out the character of these two-note slurs. And then, so the subito forte, what I was saying about accents, it applies here also, that it's not just a matter of you suddenly play louder, but, you know, very often it's a matter of a little bit of extra time and a change of pedaling. You know, and then here, surprising A sharp major harmony, switch towards D sharp minor. So again, you know, pedal can enhance the sense that we're in new harmonic territory. Yeah, so both pedal and timing can help to ensure that the movement doesn't become monotonous in any way. And so let's see, let's start with the second movement, and if we have time, we'll go back to the first. One thing I think also might be worth your thinking about is just ways to increase the contrast between allegro moderato in the first movement versus allegro vivace in the second movement. So, you know, maybe the allegro vivace can be just a skosh faster, just to, again, to sort of wake the audience up and to ensure that they don't think, oh, that was pretty, but it was all kind of the same. One other interesting detail, I think, about this theme is, you know, it falls into these little three-chord segments, ba-da-bum, and then bum-ba-dum-ba-bum, and then ba-da-dum. The length of the last chord he's a little inconsistent about that, right? I mean, eighth note, quarter note. Seems like most of them are quarter notes, but the first one is not. And that's kind of an interesting little change. And when I first saw it, I thought, that's weird. Is it some sort of misprint, or is it, an engraver's error or something? But it's consistent, and it seems like it's definitely something Beethoven had a plan there. He had some specific idea that the first one is more abrupt, da ya bum, bum bum ba da ba bum, and then the second one with the long last note, is a little more sort of settled and a little less, brusque. That might be another little interesting thing to bring out. And again, pedaling can maybe enhance the fact that this one's longer, give it a little more pedal and hang on to it a little bit longer. Anyway, let's try a little bit of this. And but then that one, for whatever bizarre random reason, that one's a quarter note. And let's see, let me just remind myself. Yeah, so there he goes back to eighth note. I mean, it's as I said, the first time I saw it, it's like, this is so random. But, it kind of makes life a little more interesting, maybe. And these ones are long. And then, of course, in the coda, what distinguishes it is suddenly the slurs get so much longer, and that is also a notable and interesting change. The difference between the long slurs and the short little two-note slurs, these little. It's very hyperactive looking on the page. I mean, all these tiny little two-note slurs. But then, meanwhile, in the left hand, I mean, these differences in texture are so interesting and so much fun in this movement. Anyway, I guess we were there. Symbols in the notation of piano music that I consider most problematic in a way is the little star that represents lifting your foot, taking the pedal off. I think often when we see the star, just, we're well trained as pianists for our foot just to go whoop, immediately to come off. And sometimes, I mean, more often than not, I feel like the release of the pedal does not have to always be an abrupt affair. And sometimes, the sound can linger a little bit. And sometimes it can be a little disappointing if you have and then so just make sure that the last note is satisfactory. I mean, that it's an eighth note, but I would say kind of a fat eighth note. And so that way the contrast between major and minor can be, really very vivid there, and not just, don't choke it off. Yum! Good. And one just practical, technical thing I'll encourage you to think about is what I've found very useful is using a lot of thumbs in there, actually, doing kind of 1, 3, 1, 4, 1, 2, 1, 3, that kind of thing. I find that makes it a little easier to do the two-note slur with that fingering. If you do kind of 1, 2, 2, 5, or something like that, that tends, I find, to undermine a little bit this elaborate articulation, this obsessive two-note slurring that Beethoven writes. I mean, this one, maybe I would do 1, 3, 2, 4, but then something like this, definitely 1, 2, 1, 3 would be much. So I use the thumb a lot, and it ensures that the first note gets a little more weight. And the you got to have a very mobile thumb, and so you've got to be happy to move it around like this. That's a fun exercise. Do you want to just try that exercise for the fun of it? That's right. You have no difficulty with that. And, that one, it might be a little too extreme to make the thumb, when the thumb has to do anything very extreme, you can. Yeah. Anyway, you don't have to figure that out here on stage in front of everyone. But yeah, something to mess with in the practice room. Good. I've screwed something up. There we go. Is this like the Henley software? Yeah, I don't know how it works. There's so many different apps for viewing music, and I get completely muddled between them. Anyway, yeah, we don't have a lot of time, but yeah, I liked the first movement very, very much, as I said, and beautiful sound at the opening and everything, very smooth and lyrical, and nice contrast with the articulation there. I think just, when you come to ends of sections, to my mind, I felt like maybe you could define them a little more. Just maybe my taste is maybe towards just 1% more slowing, just at the ends of sections, and just slightly more breathing between this and that. Again, I mean, you don't want to, of course, get too stuck. You want to keep the flow going. But on the other hand, if there's too much of this sense of it's always flowing, it's always uniformly moving forward, it may be one of those cases where the audience sort of starts to nod off a little, and just to make sure everyone knows, a new theme is beginning here. Because the two themes, I mean, in some Beethoven sonatas, I mean, the contrast between first and, the tonic theme and the dominant theme is tremendous. In this in this particular sonata, I mean, they're both kind of easygoing lyrical themes, right? And so again, there's that danger that they'll all sort of blend together in the listener's ears. So just by doing a little more of defining this cadence, and then restart. At one point, I talked about how, the contrast between major and minor can be enhanced by the use of the pedal, and that's a great example of it. And I mean, it's so nice, it's so attractive when this theme comes back, transformed into the minor. So enjoy that, maybe just a touch more, and maybe just let your foot gain a little weight in there. You do want to just try this, and then we'd better wrap it up. Yeah, and in general, don't be stingy with your rests is my advice. This story about when some interviewer was asking Schnabel to contrast himself with other pianists. And I love this story. Schnabel said, well, other pianists, they play the notes better than I do, but no one plays the rests better than me. And so, this quarter rest here, it's a great opportunity. And in general, I like to exaggerate my rests a little bit as a general rule. And so I mean, don't be ashamed to just take a breath for a moment extra there. And then similarly, I mean, when you get to do, which is a little premonition of the second movement, isn't it? Just maybe sit for a moment on that sforzando and maybe even give the sforzando a little bit of those other ingredients I was talking about, a little something with time, a little something with pedaling. Again, just to make sure it's really vivid and that it stands out in the audience's memory, that they think, wow, remember that sforzando on page 2? That was really cool. Good, all right. So yeah, those are my, my miscellaneous thoughts on this charming and wonderful piece that, as I said, I mean, it's very smooth and soothing, this piece, which is is lovely and attractive for the audience, but does carry with it the danger of it seeming a little bit uniform. And so just be aware of that and do everything you can just to, bring out the contrasts and the quirky characters, the different characters and personalities that are embedded in this piece. Great, thank you so much. Well, good to see you, good to see you. All right, great, welcome. Fabulous. Great, great. All right, well, it's great to hear you again. Shu Guang did his master's degree with me at Wisconsin, finished a couple of years ago, so it's great to intersect once more. So at this point, have you played all the ballades? Or,
yeah, I didn't perform a lot of them.
Right. Well, that makes sense. Yeah, so this ballade, I mean, the third, in some ways, I mean, it presents some particular interpretive challenges, I think. It's, in some ways, it's sort of the most uniform of them. I mean, of course, the first and the fourth being in minor keys, they then have middle episodes that are in the major, and that sort of provides a very vivid and obvious point of contrast for the listener. And are both very sort of turbulent and stormy off and on. They sort of alternate between stormy and peaceful. And same with the second ballade, the F major battling it out with A minor. This one, I mean, it's all sort of very major, and it's all very sort of lilting and sort of easygoing, and therefore, I mean, it's sort of related to what I was saying about the Beethoven, that it can, after a while, sort of get us, sort of hypnotize us into this sort of state where we sort of stop noticing any features of any details of what the pianist is doing. So one definitely has to sort of have a plan. How am I going to get, the first section, the A flat major? How am I going to? What's your plan for contrasting that then with the F major section here with the second theme? And of course, there's no one way to do that. I've never performed the piece. I mean, of course, I've read it through and I've taught it several times, but I think the first theme and the first section. To me, it's still sort of Chopin is kind of exploring here a little. It's sort of, it takes a while for things to get going, and there's sort of this back and forth, forte, piano, and sort of, I mean, to me, the most obvious difference between the two themes is that, when you get to the F major, it's so regular. Ba-dum, 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 ba-dee-da-da-da-dum, ba-dum, ba-da. So that's one kind of playing. But then the sort of stopping and starting of the A flat major section and the sort of kind of hesitant, wandering, meandering character of it, that's something different. And, and so probably a little more rubato possibly in the opening section might be a good strategy, and just having this picture very clearly in your mind so that then you can convey that to the audience. When we get to that F major section, I mean, then of course it goes for quite a while, and there's so much ba-dum, 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 ba-dum. I mean, pages and pages of it. And, he mixes it up with some 16th notes, and sometimes ba-dum, ba-dum becomes ba-dum, 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 ba-dum. But there is always this sense that it's sort of uniformly flowing along. And then here it comes again. But this time, of course, in a different key, this time in D flat major instead of F major. And so if if somehow you can make that very clear to the audience members, even those who don't have perfect pitch, that there's something different about the personality of D flat major, think about, how are you going to somehow bring out the difference between very kind of bright and pastoral and straightforward F major. Versus, much sort of darker and richer D flat major. That's my particular association with those keys anyway. Which then provides a bridge to C sharp minor, which obviously, is much more neurotic than anything we've heard for several pages. In fact, more neurotic than anything we've had in the piece heretofore. And of course, then that's the beginning of sort of this process of buildup that ultimately leads us to the triumphant return of the main theme here. And and so forth. So anyway, so yeah, just, of course, with Shuguang, I never have to say, you've got the wrong note here and your fingering is terrible there or whatever. We don't have to worry about any of those mechanics. So just sort of thinking about the, the philosophy of this piece and as in Opus 78, figuring out how to, to make sure that the pleasant, pastoral, peaceful character of it doesn't turn into monotony. So, anyway, so yeah, just, think about that a little, and let's just play through some things and mess around. And again, you certainly don't have to do this when, you ultimately perform this or do it in competitions or whatever. But just humor me, maybe try once just, with a little less flow and a little less confidence and just a little more waiting around. Just don't be too darn confident, gradually, it starts to get its rhythmic swing going. Then a first little crisis, a little hint of minor. And then, of course, when the theme comes back now, it's different than it was at the beginning. At the beginning, as I said, you're still just sort of finding your way, and you're sort of traveling blind. You're in a dark room, sort of feeling your way around. By the time you get here, maybe the sun started to come up, and and you start to feel a little more confident of your surroundings. Good. All right. So as I said, of course, the signature rhythm, I mean, it doesn't take any sort of genius to recognize that the signature rhythm is this 3-1, 3-1, 3-1. I mean, we have a hell of a lot of it in this section. And of course, what's interesting about that rhythm is that I mean, the question is, which note are you going to play louder? Which note are you going to give more to, the 3 or the 1? And of course, there are arguments in favor of both. Of course, putting some emphasis on the 1 makes sense because that's where the beat is, right? We got to make sure that the audience knows where the beat is. Of course, I don't think there's actually any serious danger in this piece that people are going to get lost and confused about where the beat is. I think it'll be clear. I mean, you understand where it is, and of course, when the bass comes in, the bass is always on the beat, and that's that defines the beat well enough. And I think in circumstances like this, I have a slight prejudice in favor of giving a little more to 3, 3-1. 3-1, 3-1, and not allowing it to be 3-1, 3-1, 3-1, because 3-1, 3-1, 3-1, has a little bit of a pedantic character to it, I think. And of course, it's very easy for that to happen because we're playing the note that's on the beat with our thumb, and thumbs have a way of going thump, and so I almost wonder, what would it be like if you did 5-2, 5-2, 5-2, 5-2? I mean, I don't know if I'm seriously suggesting that, but but certainly it changes the sound a little bit. So maybe you don't have to do that, but definitely, I mean, make sure, you're keeping that thumb under control would be my advice. And I think there's something appealing about having a little more shine on the high note. And of course, that's where the melody is, right? those are the interesting notes, you know, the 13th, and whereas C is just boring old dominant, you know. So, ding, ding. And now we start to get a little, some interesting neuroses start to encroach, you know. I mean, the neuroses, of course, start with that A flat right there. That A flat, you know, adds a little spice to the mixture. We've had so much purely diatonic F major here. But then he makes a little hint at F minor. And then, of course, the hint of F minor becomes more than a hint a little later here. Yeah, it's, of course, it's the neuroses that make, you know, that make a story interesting, right? And this is blissfully free of neuroses here, but then they start to appear and life gets interesting. So let's maybe just go from somewhere here. The regular rhythmic pattern, the regular beat, the regular dance keeps going. Ba-bum, ba-bum, ba-bum. Obviously, the character has changed quite a bit here, and you know, the more you feel that, the more the audience will feel it, and the less they'll feel like, oh, this piece, it goes on a little too long, you know. And good. Good, and let's maybe just in the couple of minutes we have left, maybe let's do a little bit of the, well, maybe go from that D flat major I was talking about with its different color. I mean, to me, a sort of darker color, and I mean, it's a third lower everything, so make sure, try to communicate that difference to the audience. And watch your thumb. here, maybe to me, your pedaling is maybe 1% on the dry side. I think it could be a little darker and just there's. I mean, yes, I know you're dealing with a semitone in the bass, so you might think, oh, I have to keep it clean, but I think it's okay if it's a little dirty, you know, that's okay. This thing here, of course, is very inconvenient, isn't it? And you could consider cheating on that and doing that. And so on. So anyway, just not something you have to do right now, but I always thought that was so inconvenient, such a pain, and gets in the way. All right, well, it would be unfortunate to make you stop there, so play from here to the end and we'll call it a half hour. So, off. And I would make it a definitive off. Not just kind of not. Somehow it says, okay, so everyone hears the cutoff. Good, all right, bravo. So great to hear. Go ahead. right. Very lovely. Very lovely. Yeah, great. And yeah, actually, I found very interesting the amount to which you slowed down on these 2 pages was sort of a different take. You don't hear that so often, and I quite liked it. So yeah, I mean, it might be that it kind of, the tempo fell off the map a little too much, but the concept, I think, is very interesting, and I think I'm in favor of things like that. Good, yeah, you capture very well the sort of dreaminess of it and the sort of almost amorphous kind of quality. This opening, of course, it's such a bizarre, I mean, there's nothing quite like it in the whole literature, this weird sort of repeating 1, 2, and 3, and then repeating 5 every now and then, and it's very perverse piano writing, you know. And very awkward, obviously. And yet somehow, you know, it has to sound just like this, you know, this glistening, shimmering, effortless sort of thing, which, and yet, you know, as mortals, we struggle with this sort of stuff. One thing I think you might find helpful is if you think a little more in terms of the beats and a little more in terms of groups of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That, you know, some of the beats, you know, you have a C sharp major chord. Other beats, you have an A natural. And if you're just kind of following that, and this, and then this, and then this, and in particular, I mean, obviously, following the top note, G sharp, A, G sharp, A. So you got 2 different kinds of beats, right? I mean, you've got the chord, single chord beats, and then you've got the single chord, single beats, to put it kind of crudely. And just, you know, be very aware of those 2 different kind of characters, the do, and then da-da-da-dum, da-da-da-dum, ba-da-da-dum, ba-da-da-dum, ba-da-da-dum. And just be aware, I mean, the finger that repeats the least well is the thumb, at least on my hand. And so this, the thumb constantly having to do that little groovy rhythm, boom, 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 boom. That's actually a very useful thing to practice, just boom, 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 boom. And then finally. And then on top of that, then you've got this pattern I was talking about. Jugga, dugga, 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 dugga. And practice all of those permutations and combinations. And well, let's just try a little bit of that. So let's start maybe. Well, start actually just with the. Nice and easy. 3, 5, 3, 5, 3, 5. Yeah, not too hard, right? And then, yeah, maybe let's do some of that here. That's right. And I mean, of course, you know, there has to be, you know, when you're playing this, it's a matter of kind of tension management. I mean, of course, the thumb is going to get tired and it's going to get tense. And to some extent, a little tension, I mean, people tend to treat tension like it's, poison. You must never have any tension in your hand whatsoever. But if you had no tension in your hand at all, you'd be a rag doll. So, I mean, there just has to be the right balance of tension, and I mean, it has to be very focused and. That's right, and it's this little Morse code or whatever. It's it's got a certain little rhythmic groove to it, which is kind of surprising in this amorphous piece. That underneath the surface, there's this very jazzy sort of rhythm going on. All right, so now I add the second finger. That's right, and of course give a little more to the second finger than to the thumb. Good, all right, and now the third finger joins the party. Right, and the third finger even more. I mean, just give, progressively more weight to the higher fingers and less to the thumb. That's right, and I mean, it's, very, very clear and distinct, and yet within pianissimo. All right, so now let's do maybe a little bit of, how about you? Let's do that. And then to there, and then to there, and then to there. Yeah. That's right. And you've got pattern A. Let's call it pattern A. And then pattern B. And they just alternate. Pattern A, pattern B. Pattern A, pattern B. Good. All right. So now let's see what happens when we play it the way Ravel notated it.
Should I do the repeating pattern?
Yeah, do all the notes that are there, but focus your brain particularly just on the G sharp on the beat, then the A on the beat, then the G sharp, then the A. Good. And now just, if you can maybe lighten the right thumb even more, and let's just maybe push the tempo just a little bit. I mean, of course, we naturally assume that the faster this goes, the more difficult it's going to be. But that's not entirely true, actually. I think, once you've got your hand sort of trembling and shaking, a little faster might actually not necessarily be harder. So. Yeah, that's such a silly, sadistic thing that he does to us there by making us play that C sharp that you've already played 1,000 of or whatever. But this time it's part of the melody. And when he gets into the second beat, he starts leaving out some notes. He finally acknowledges reality and says it's not physically possible to play all of the normal notes there. You have to leave some of them out to make room for the melody in the left hand. And actually, I would start the business of leaving notes out earlier. So I would not play those two C sharps there. They're just in the way. I mean, even God sitting out in the audience is not going to be able to hear the difference if you leave those two C sharps out. But what God will hear is that, wow, that left-hand melody really comes out clearly, even though the C sharp conflicts with all of this stuff that the accompaniment is doing. Yeah, so just leave some C sharps out in there and no one will miss them. And with your left hand, to some extent, I feel like the perfect fingering for the left hand here is just 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, and just kind of reaching down like God giving life to Adam or something. And now, I don't know if I seriously suggest that, but when you get to here, though, I think you might find it helpful to just do 2, 2, 2. Because if you start using 1, 2, 3, and 4, then your left hand is going to be kind of flat like this, and it's going to get in the right hand's way. So, but if you're like this, then the right hand is unencumbered. So maybe go from here and just try a little more of that poking with your second finger. Good. And always somewhere in the back of your brain, keeping track of G sharp, A sharp, G sharp, A sharp, those notes on the top of the right hand on the beat. So just from there. Good. One other thing that I think is helpful to think about there is maybe just curling the third finger a little extra. Your third finger is a little flat. Maybe if you think of it a little more as a claw or something like that. Just try that. That's right. Just a little more of that tension that you're not supposed to have any of, but you need a little of, just in the first joint of the third finger. That's right. But then, in addition to that, let's add one B sharp there. So that's right. Good, yeah. So it's one of the paradoxes of this piece that it's this very smooth, dreamy, amorphous sort of effect. And yet, under the surface, your fingers are actually, they're very dutiful little soldiers. They're doing this slightly rhythmic thing. And that combination of, you're using lots of pedal and you've got this very languorous kind of left hand. And yet, under the surface, there's this, this constant patter of Good, all right, now I'll tell you what, let's do all of the top of the right hand. So 3, 5, 3, 3. So that's it. Good, good. All right, now add the other notes, including the left hand. Right. And though, even though you've got this very precise and very articulate kind of right hand, that doesn't mean it gets loud. It's still within pianissimo. It's very sort of confusing and seemingly contradictory and paradoxical. I seem to be asking for two opposite things at the same time, and yet somehow it's possible to have both in some magical way. Yeah, and you know, here, my tendency is kind of to do 5, 2, 5, 2. Maybe not on every one of them. I mean, that might be a little sadistic, but particularly when they're black notes, it's actually not that difficult to do. 5, 2. I haven't practiced this in about 30 years, but it's whatever. So just you see if that works for you. 5, 2. That's right, and just kind of the goal is to get the thumb out of the way, because the thumb is going to interfere with the left hand, with the right hand. So yeah, just. Good, all right, now add the right hand and see if that maybe helps just your right hand to feel less claustrophobic. Good, and now finally we have something more resembling normal piano technique here. So. Good, and maybe give me a little more that melody note. It's easy for it to get swallowed up by the accompaniment, you know. So. Good, and then here too, I mean, just be aware of that pattern. But here it's of course split between the hands in a very weird and counterintuitive way. And I remember spending a lot of time practicing these bloody 3 measures here. Well, 4 if you count that. Good, all right, so we're going to need to wrap it up soon. But yeah, just this interesting paradox that you can have, you know, along with the general sort of atmospheric fogginess of this thing. You also have, you know, the shimmering clarity of bubbling water, which he's evoking here. And so it shouldn't be completely amorphous. And the funny thing is if you're thinking about these sort of rhythmic patterns, it can help your technique. It's It's not just a matter of make your fingers stronger and faster or whatever. It's a matter of sort of thinking right about it, and because otherwise, yeah, it's this intimidating mass of 30-second notes. But there are these little patterns in there that can help your fingers and that can also, just help bring out that sparkling quality. That it does have this sort of subdued sparkling. So, good. All right, bravo. Thank you. All right. So, one more and coming from here. All right, welcome. Great, very expressive, and lots of heartfelt sentiment went into that, and yeah, it's very, very nice. I had a friend once, a very good and perceptive musician, a composer, who was, sort of a modernist and not much inclined towards listening to romantic music, and heard this piece and hadn't really heard it before, and said, "I don't think this piece has any form whatsoever." And I was sort of surprised to say, well, it's in sonata allegro form. It's surprising in a way that, it's not textbook sonata allegro form, but there's still a recapitulation that's pretty straightforward. But something about the piece, this friend of mine just couldn't make out that there was a form there, and I think it's it's not that surprising in a way. I think to me, what's difficult about making this piece coherent to the listener is just, the rubato, the way he writes. There is such an extreme excess of ritardandos. Retard here, one on the first page, two on the second page. Then we get a couple pages without, but it's when we get to like the fourth page where it's rit, adagio, rit, adagio. By the time you get to the sixth ritardando, what do you do? This thing is, dragging in the mud, and what do you do in between? Do you sort of get the tempo back, or do you keep getting slower? How do you manage that? It's a real conundrum, a real problem, and it may have been what contributed to my friend's sense that this thing just kind of wanders aimlessly, So I think, to some extent, we have to be very mindful of that, and we have to be a little sort of selective and very discriminating about when we take the extra time, when we move forward. And, sometimes, maybe a 4/4 bar should just be a 4/4 bar, 1, 2, 3, 4. Because I think, if you don't have some of those straightforward sorts of measures, then, after a while, the rubato loses its expressive, there's rubato inflation. The more rubato you have, after a while, it stops having a punch. It stops. It no longer does it make the audience sigh, but it makes them groan. So I think just think a little bit about that. I wouldn't go so far as to say practice this piece with a metronome, but maybe just, it might be an interesting experiment just to see what it's like, and of course it'll feel like an anti-musical prison or something, but it's still, might be instructive. You might sort of learn, oh, wow, I was taking a lot of time that I didn't realize I was taking. I think one pattern I tend to perceive in your rubato is sort of between the second and the third beat. You kind of speed your way from 2 to 3. It's kind of 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. I'm exaggerating, obviously, but so maybe just be a little aware of that pattern that sort of started to dawn on me as you played. I sort of started to notice that was a little a habit, maybe. So, I mean, obviously, it's a piece that needs rubato, and Schumann asks for it repeatedly. But just, be mindful about exactly how you do it, and when the times are when you just want to be a little more straightforward and just And just practicing it that way without the distraction of all the activity in the left hand may just sort of help with perceiving, the longer line. And just, it's not a complicated melody. It's totally diatonic, it's all white keys. So, it has a certain directness and simplicity, in addition to, of course, having this passionate intensity and fantasy. Of course, that wasn't without rubato. There was some rubato in there, and for particularly intense and beautiful chords, that very first D minor 7th chord there over a G bass, that you got to sink your teeth into a little bit, and the 3 sforzandos, but then after that, maybe keep it simple for a moment. Good. So, yeah, it's not that I want to put you in a no rubato straitjacket or anything like that, but just choose your rubato carefully, basically. And the piano, after the fortissimo sounds so sweet and childlike almost. And so yeah, and again, don't let it get too neurotic and too complex, when it doesn't need to be neurotic and complex. And sometimes it does need to be, of course. But anyway, let's go from A minor there. Right, and it's the first, of a long generation of ritardandos. Well, there are 2 of them within close proximity of each other. And because it's the first, I would say just not too much. It's like, when you're running a marathon, you don't want to stop for a long water break, before you reach the first mile post. So, we'll have time for ritardandos, big ones, later. Good, so keep going. piano, I mean, even though it's marked piano, just make sure it's a very penetrating sort of piano, because, I mean, your right hand has these single, puny little notes, while meanwhile the left hand is it's not a fair contest. So, just give a little more to the right hand there. Yeah, my advice there, again, don't let the show stop completely. Because, we're not even really done with the first theme yet, So I think this, this C minor, or is it E flat major, it's an outgrowth of what came before. So it's not like it's a whole new theme or a whole new section. It's a continuation. And in the interest of people like my skeptical friend who thought this piece had no form, if you stop there and if you keep stopping, that's what gives the impression of formlessness. Good. So maybe just from here, and we'll do that transition into the C minor. Good. All right. So you took my advice maybe even a little further than I would have. I mean, it's not the A flat has to be early, but just don't just put it more or less on time so people can understand. It's a syncopated rhythm. Bum ba yum ba yadum. I think rubato, there's holding back and there's pushing forward. I would not overuse pushing forward rubato because I think it can create this slightly sort of spasmodic kind of quality like this. So, yeah, and again, in something like this, it's so sweet and it's so simple, just not quite with the metronome, but a little closer to that, and just so it's a certain childlike innocence to it. So we've already had 2 ritardandos, and so I kept them pretty modest. that hanging on E flat is so cool. And of course, you have to give a lot to that sforzando, or it's not going to sound through all the way. And also, if you slow down too much, then this thing will be totally faded out by the time you get to the quarter rest. So that's another argument in favor of not overdoing it with these retardandos. That's such a great chord. So that when you get to here, instead of the audience thinking, oh my God, yet more ritardandos, yet more rubato, they think, oh, you know, this is so special because we haven't had too much in the preceding couple of pages, and now you're really indulging, and it's something people remember. Good, so I think I've probably burned through all my time. Yes, pretty much. So then we get the development section, which is, you know, it's not kind of a textbook Beethoven-Waldstein sonata kind of development, but I mean, particularly this sort of long episode in the minor here doesn't sound very development-like somehow. And yet, you know, that's kind of the structural role that it's fulfilling. So anyway, you know, and you know, like a good development, it does have sort of a build-up, and then it dissipates at the, you know, a couple of build-ups actually, and then dissipates at the end, leading back then to this recapitulation. So the most time occurs at the end of the exposition, the end of the development, and then at in the final coda. So yeah, just you know, be very strategic about rubato and about timing, so that then that way, you know, your natural sort of expressiveness, you don't want to overuse it, or you know, it's expressiveness inflation, as I was saying, that, you know, each dollar of expressiveness and dollar of rubato that you use, you know, if you start to print too many of these bills, they lose their value. So, good. All right, well, thank you very much.